Before we dive into communicating about health, we have to understand where our communication comes from, and that is the body of evidence. Health is a science, and our communication needs to be based on the evidence that we have available to us. I have an image here of an advertisement for a health product from 1885, and the product was toothache drops that contained cocaine. This is a real ad, and the product that they were promoting was indeed effective at helping with a toothache. Of course, we now know that the ingredient of cocaine is not safe. The science evolved, and now we don't promote this kind of product due to emerging evidence. This may seem obvious using this particular example, but it's a good place to start when we're learning about what a body of evidence is. A body of evidence helps us understand if something is effective, but also if something is safe. When we're communicating about health and give health advice, we have to make sure that advice has evidence behind it. We need to assess that the advice that we're giving is, number one, safe, and then number two, effective. People who give health advice not based on evidence will frequently violate one or both of these items. For example, a celebrity that promotes a weight loss cleanse, which is very low calorie, is promoting something that is likely to be effective. That is, you'll probably lose weight, at least in the short term, but very likely to be unsafe. Very low calorie diets can lead to unwanted loss of muscle mass, and they're also linked to increased disordered eating and poor body image. Another influencer might convince you to use something like lavender essential oils to help you sleep. While this practice is likely safe, it may actually do nothing at all for your sleep, meaning it is not very effective. Using proper context with health communication means we pay attention to who or what was studied and how. Here's a real-world example of a tweet from a health professional pointing out a lack of context from a news headline. The headline, which is at the bottom of the picture, says, "Exercise changes the way our bodies handle saturated fat, study finds." The health professional pointed out that this was a study done on men. This matters. We can't assume that women would respond the same way metabolically, so the headline is misleading due to improper context. Sometimes you'll see this done with animal studies. People will promote a study's finding, but if you look at the actual study, it was done on mice, for example. This is an essential part of the context needed. Another example is on the popular supplement of creatine. The research behind creatine has shown that it can be very helpful in very specific athletic situations. For example, it's been shown to help in muscle growth, especially in young men doing specific forms of exercise and taking a specific creatine dose. But you will find that it's common for people to promote creatine without that proper context. Simply telling people that creatine helps build muscle, for example. This is not accurate because it's missing critical context. The creatine example I just provided is also a good example for proper dosage. The dose matters a lot. What does the evidence show to be a good dose if we want to experience benefits? Is there potential harm from a higher dose? At what point do the benefits decline? Another example of health communication that requires context on dosing is in pesticide exposure. Every year, an activist organization called the Environmental Working Group, or the EWG, puts out a list it calls the Dirty Dozen and lists 12 fruits or veggies that are so-called high in pesticide residues. They receive a lot of buzz and press around this. But let's pause and consider dosage. First of all, we need to consider the fact that what is actually being measured is something called pesticide residues, which is not the same thing as pure pesticides. Then we need to consider dose in relation to our health. Are pesticide residues unsafe for us to consume? And if so, at what dose do they become unsafe? How high is too high of an exposure? Is it still within safe levels, but just a little higher than other forms of produce? Or is it at a dosage that we should probably be concerned about? Many health professionals have pointed out the flaws in the Dirty Dozen related to this fuzzy wording used rather than precise dosing. Some evidence has even shown that this fear-based messaging may actually cause some consumers to eat less fruits and vegetables out of fear of consuming pesticides, especially low-income consumers who've been led to believe that they must purchase organic versions of the Dirty Dozen. It's possible that this messaging is causing harm due to this, as the benefits from eating fruits and vegetables has been clearly established through research, and causing people to eat less without valid concern is worrisome. Another real-world example of someone providing health information that's not based on evidence. This account, Naveen Sankar, posted advice to consume cloves to improve liver function. He doesn't provide actual evidence, and also he doesn't provide any dosing information. He's answered by someone claiming to be a liver doctor, but this person rightly called out the misinformation, stating there's no actual evidence that shows this to be the case in humans. Now, is the advice safe? Likely so, but of course there may be unknown issues if a person decides to overconsume cloves. The most likely issue would probably be stomach upset, but we really don't know. We don't have evidence to show an upper limit for eating cloves. Is the advice effective? No, it will not do what Naveen says it will do, at least based on our current body of evidence. In fact, his advice could cause harm if a person decides to try cloves as a medical intervention instead of being treated with evidence-based interventions. Remember that health is based on science, and science is based on scientific evidence. Our communication should always be clear about the evidence, if it is strong or minimal or emerging, for example. But where do we find the evidence? In order for everything to become part of our body of evidence, it needs to go through scientific study, and then it needs to be summarized as a research study, submitted to a research journal that only publishes studies that have gone through a peer review process. That is, research studies are only published if a panel of other experts in that area agree that the study methods and the study findings and the study conclusions are valid. A foundational skill for you as you progress into your health career is becoming more comfortable finding and understanding peer-reviewed published research. Another foundational skill is the knowledge that different research studies provide different levels of evidence. For example, a case study on one person is evidence, but it is weak evidence. It provides the field something to consider for future study. A systematic review, however, is strong evidence because it methodically reviews the results of multiple research studies that were done on the same topic to find the overall evidence on that topic. Here are some things to keep in mind with scientific evidence. First, evidence is rarely absolute, but this can be frustrating for people who want a yes or a no answer. Here you see a tweet that summarizes the public's discomfort with health advice that was given during the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of the pieces of health advice, like recommending to stay 6 feet away from other people, were not based on concrete, absolute evidence, but instead were medical experts' best estimate of a doable behavior that will likely help curb the transmission of the virus. This ability to understand the nuances of evidence is part of a person's scientific literacy. Science also takes time. This was another frustration during the pandemic. In order to study if something works, especially if it works in the long term, takes time. We must be okay with saying that we don't yet have the answers to a particular health problem. Science can also give us conflicting answers. Sometimes the conflict is not from the science, but from the interpretation of the science, such as what is shown here. You see two very different headlines about coffee, one singing the praises of coffee and the other warning of the dangers. But which is it? Well, these two headlines were both based off of completely different studies, with completely different study design and also different subjects. In fact, the scary headline is based off of a rodent study, not humans. You can see why the public gets confused and frustrated. When research is conducted and the study is published in a peer-reviewed journal, that study findings add to our body of evidence. It does not prove. Please be careful to avoid using the word prove, proven. This word is not used by reputable health experts because science rarely proves something. It provides evidence, sometimes strong evidence.